gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of FOL Marketplace. This is our business, economic, and finance discussion. We do this every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's right now is 5 o'clock or 5:10. No, 8:10 Liberian time. That's the time in Liberia. Right now, we want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Today, our discussion is on gauging the economic impulse of Liberia, the economic pulse of Liberia. How is our economy performing? Is our economy doing well? Is it not doing well? How is it doing? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Joining me, I have a member of the Everywhere Marketplace team, Mr. or Professor Larry Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Dennis. Always a pleasure being here with my colleague, Depu. Nice to be here, buddy.
Thank you. Also want to welcome FOL resident economist, and this guy has his fingerprint on the PAPD, Mr. Depu Zuo. Welcome, Depu.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity. I've been away for a while. Good to see you again, Larry, and thank you so much, Mr. Jha.
Thank you and welcome back. I know sometimes the schedule here in the States is not favorable to everybody at the same time, but thank you so much for making the time to join us. Later on, we're going to be joined by Mr. Gabriel Carter. He's running late. He's going to be here shortly so that we gauge the economic pulse of our country. And I want to open the discussion by asking, when someone say the performance or gauging the economic pulse or how the economy is doing, Depu, what does that mean?
Oh, thank you so much. In terms of performance, we have to look at it from two ends. The first thing there is that people look at the quantitative growth of the economy in terms of how the GDP is growing. I say GDP growth is that what we produce in the economy and the output from the economy, how is it going, whether it's increasing or it's decreasing. And that itself, from year to year, you look at it. And for the World Bank and the IMF, you'll be looking mainly at GDP growth in terms of how are you growing your industry and how are you doing other work. Now, that itself does not really translate into what we call improvement in the standard, the living standard of the people. So therefore, someone will also be looking at economic development. That has to be the cost of living and the living standard of people. How are they're taking pay, and they in terms of income of household, how are they doing? So these are things that you're going to be looking at. And one thing there is that people, as we speak right now, one of the major indicators that globally people are looking at is inflation, including the United States and the rest of the world. Right now, the world is engulfed by high inflation, and therefore it's like the simple way to put it is your pocket poor, meaning that you being pocket poor means that you have some money in your hand thinking that this worth this amount, but in real term, when you go to use it, it's not enough to cover your living expense. So that is good to call it pocket poor. So many countries will be fighting to see how best to reduce the inflation, to ensure that whatever income that an individual or household receive is worth it. It can buy more things and it's guaranteed to have value. Besides the inflation challenge that the whole world is going through now, there's something that it's important that I want to introduce here that Liberians need to look at. Is what we call it the Human Development Index. Besides all of these things we're talking about, to see that whether your country is small, you got high GDP, but once your development index is improving, then we know now that okay, the living condition in the country is better off. So especially so for developing country like Liberia and across Africa, it's good to focus more on how do we improve your HDI. And that has to do with the education, the life expectancy, and all of these things of the condition. When you look at these things, it gives you opportunity to gauge to know that yes, this country is doing well. But from all indications, you will see that our HDI is not really going, not much improvement compared to what it's been for the past years, and therefore we will say yes. In terms of quantitatively, we are performing, we are growing. According to the estimate from the IMF, we're supposed to be growing at 4.2% this year, and from that projection, we will be able to see the first quarter how did we perform as a country, and that will be the end of this month to see whether Liberia is doing well or not.
Thank you. Let me bring you in, Larry. For my little sister in Bannersville, what does the economy mean to her, right? Or my friend in Canfor, Nimba County. So how do you explain the economy is doing well or the economy is not doing well to that person, or measuring the economy? How would you say that to such a person to understand?
Thanks, Dennis. So, in order to understand, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist, a math professor, and finance economic professor. Just ask yourself two basic questions when it comes to the economy. Number one, do you have a job? If you're somebody who is out there supposed to be looking for a job, looking for a way to kind of feed your family, you should ask yourself, do you have a job? The reason I say you should ask yourself that question is because job creation is directly tied into the economy. If the economy is doing well, there's a 99% chance a lot of people in the country will also be either employed or doing well. So anybody who interested in understanding why the economy is important or what this economy is all about, just ask yourself, if I wanted to go find a job right now, take all the college graduates that are in Liberia. If they wanted to go find a job right now, can they find a good job that would pay them a decent salary? If the answer is no, that should kind of tell you right there that the economy is not doing so well. Because when you see other countries around you and you hear people that are creating jobs or you hear people not creating jobs, that has to do directly with the economy. The other thing you should ask yourself about the economy is when you go to the market and buy food, and pretty much everybody needs food to sustain themselves, right?
Right.
So for your little sister over in Bonneville or for somebody, I don't care whether you all the way down in the southeast, it doesn't matter. The money you were taking last year or the year before to go to the market and buy yourself food, rice, a basket of food, can you take that same money today and go to the market and buy that same amount of food? If the answer is no, that tells you the economy is also not doing well because prices have increased over time. So if you don't have a job and prices have gone up, that means the economy is not doing well. That's what the economy boils down to. Do you have a job to get money to feed your family? Do you have enough money to go and buy
But
food?
Larry,
Mhm.
how many people should I ask to be able to tell that, right? Because let's say I got people in Bannersville, I got people in Keba, Newtown, Ghanarsville. If I ask one person those questions you just stated and they say no, does that give me an accurate measure, or I have to ask everybody?
So you can do a small sample. One person is not a good enough sample. You have to do a small sample and you have to do it across different areas. The unemployment in Monrovia is far lower. The unemployment and poverty in Monrovia is far lower than the unemployment and poverty outside of Monrovia in the rural areas. The rural areas, the poverty is around 70 something percent. And this is the information coming from the World Bank. So if you want to find out a good measure, maybe you have to do a sample of like 100 people or 1,000 people, but you need a good sample. But someone has already done that work for us. And a lot of that work has already been done by the World Bank, by the IMF, and even to a certain extent by LISGIS, the geostatistical people that collect this information because they send it over to the central bank. So when you look on the CBL website, that information is there. So you, brother Jai, you don't have to do it personally because somebody has already done that legwork. So if the people in Newtown, when you go to the market in Newtown, and the money you were losing last year to buy food, if that money is still not enough, then you know the economy, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You'll probably feel the pain in your belly. Let me say this real before I swing it back to you, Dennis. Why is the economy so important? And right now, back in 1992, when Bill Clinton was running for the presidency here in the US against George Bush the first, the chief strategist for Bill Clinton, James Carville, his name, he wanted to keep Bill Clinton on message. He wrote something and put it on Bill Clinton's wall. And the one key thing that stuck on Bill Clinton's mind, he said, this whole election thing, and this is the phrase he used. He said, it's about the economy, stupid. Not referring to Bill Clinton, stupid. But he's just saying that it's about the economy, stupid. Now that phrase is being used everywhere. It's about the deficit. It's about healthcare. It's about education. But mainly elections are about the economy. We're 205 days away from Liberia's election. Right now, people should kind of focus back on two things: the economy and healthcare, but mainly the economy. Right. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today so we can bring that focus in and really speak about the economy. And one thing that is coming out, the CBL annual report is supposed to be coming out at the end of March, or maybe the first week or so in April. That it will also open up a whole new can of worms and let us know exactly how the economy is doing.
Yeah, thank you. And Depu, I want you to expand on that a little more. Or is the economy, right? What does this economy include, and how does it affect us? How does it pertain to all of us in the country? Let's set that basis even before we jump into gauging the pulse of the Liberian economy.
One of the things that there is that the economy is almost like human being having blood circulation. Your blood needs to run so that your body have to move. That means that the economy has to do with what has to be produced for you to consume, what will be produced for you to actually eat on a daily basis, to live on, the house you have, and how you get money to build a house, and how you get income. So the whole thing has to do with your whole livelihood, and that all depends on your income. Just as Larry said, your income. So it has to do with job. So if there's no income, then obviously it means that you already have problem. It means that you're going to be, it's almost like someone, let me put it in a typical way, that it means you are living with low blood. And then it means when you have a low blood, it's likely that you're going to die soon. So it's always good for you to have food so that you can have enough blood to live long. So economy.
Before you continue, you say country, income. You said income. I want you to break that down too. Does income only mean when you're working and getting paid?
Income, it means that you can income will come from work, and the first way of getting income is for you to work or whatever people give you. But the fact that there is that it's not possible that you live on something that people giving you as a gift. You have to work to earn income, and therefore you could either be employed or you create job for yourself. That itself will give you income. For example, you can say to have an income, you can be in a community, and you're a high school graduate, you can say, you know what, I'm going to make a peanut farm. And that's a work that you are doing. And whatever comes from the peanut farm becomes an income for you and your family to live on. That itself is very much key. Therefore, it's paramount in any decision we make. If there's no income, the livelihood will definitely be stifled. So that's why we focus on income. And in terms of the question you're asking, how do you look at it in the common sense, is that every family members you have, you should always ask this question: how do I feed this family? If you thinking about how you feed a family, it means that you need to have income to feed the family. So therefore, every household decision will be on how to produce to feed the family. And if any country to make that, the same thing goes to the country. For any country to succeed, you must always fight hard to have income in order to what? Feed the population. So if there's difficulties for people to have job or to earn income, to work or do anything so that they can have a livelihood, it becomes a difficult thing for any economy to perform. And now going back to the situation with Liberia is that, look, you have several ways that people are earning income. Most of the Liberians, I would say, live on what we call transfer payment. It means that something that comes from different person that go to them. And it means that people who are now in Liberia, Most of them depend on family people that are here to say, you know what, this month I'm going to send $100, I'm going to send $10. But it's not sustainable. Therefore, the country should be in a position to provide jobs, provide opportunity that people can work and earn income.
Stay on
Yes.
the on income, Larry. I want us to take some time because these things, you're the economist, sometimes the language you use, not knowing the thing right in front of on our tools, but the way you call it can sometimes confuse us. Uh, Mom, what we selling in the market, right? She's selling biraba, planting. Does she have an income?
She earns her income when people come to the market to buy her goods. So that's how she earned her income. And the income, after she take the money that she received from people buying the goods, she subtract from that money the money that she spent now to buy the goods, whether she went to Guinea or somewhere else to buy it. The remaining money that she has left, that kind of her net profit, that is all part of this whole economy thing. Because if people do not have jobs, do not have money, those market women, they will not be selling as much as they need to even cover the cost of going to a Guinea. That is so important. So if the economy has to do also with the resources that is collected, the concessions, all those other agreements that we have in Liberia, it's all bundled in there. But let's look at some of the things that would be affecting the people in the marketplace, or even people in general in Liberia. Statistically, in countries or region or community where you have high unemployment, you will also end up having a very high crime rate. There's a positive relationship. So if you see countries that you have very high crime rate, there's more than likely you have a very high unemployment rate, because when people are unemployed, they will always look for ways to feed themselves. Whether it has to do with burglary, breaking into houses, trying to rob people, all kind of crazy stuff. Also, in places where you have very high unemployment, and if unemployment has to do with the economy, you will always have situations where people will be following politicians because politicians have money. Look at the riot and protest that went on over at LU. If those young people had jobs, a lot of them would be sitting out in the office doing their job, making their money to go feed their family. They would not be following politicians. It's plain and simple. It's plain and simple because they expect sometimes to receive something from the politicians, so they do it. But nobody follow political dogma, political religion, political beliefs at that level where they will leave their job in the middle of the afternoon to go follow a politician. So you only find that kind of thing in places where there's high unemployment. Create jobs, let the economy grow. You will not end up having a lot of the issues you have. The unemployment, the crime, a lot of that stuff will reduce. You cannot eliminate it 100%, but it would be a whole lot less. And what does that have to do? It has to do again with this economy, how we collect resources, how we spread that money around, how we create jobs. All of that has to do with this whole community of things that we bring in. It's like a big pot. You're cooking your palm butter, your pepper soup. Everything you put in there will make that soup sweet. If you don't have chicken soup, that soup will not be the way how you want it to be.
Right.
So that economy has to do with all these ingredients you have to put in there to make people then happy. And there's even a formula called Kuhn's law. People know it something as the happiness formula. In countries that people are very unhappy, there's also a very high unemployment rate. So the economy is the main driving force, like what my brother Depu was saying. Is that main artery, is that vein in the body that moves the blood throughout the body. The economy is what is moving everything in Liberia, makes Liberia function. You want to take a cab, you need to have a job to get the money to take the taxi. You
I'm
want to ride a
liking this very
pen,
well,
you need to have a job to get the money to go ride a pen. So if you don't have the economy growing and creating jobs, you will have a lot of miserable people.
Wow. And I'm liking this. Depu talk about the blood. You talk about the part with the meat or the vein. So my question now is, who or what is responsible for that blood to flow, or for that big part to have all the meat, the chicken soup, the pepper, everything inside? Who or what is responsible to make all those things to come together, to make that blood to run, to make that vein to carry the blood?
You want me to take a quick stab at it, Depu,
Yeah,
or you
take
want
a
to go?
stab at it, and then Depu will answer the same question. He loves that. He loves that question. I can tell.
My focus would be on two people. The main person would be the Central Bank of Liberia. If you look at the law that established the central bank, and this is for central banks all around the world, not just Liberia, the Federal Reserve Bank in the US, whether it's the Bundesbank in Germany or the Central Bank of China, they all have a key mandate. That is to stabilize the economy, reduce the number of unemployment, create economic growth, make sure there's stability throughout the system. The CBL, it's on the CBL law. I'm not making it up. It's the CBL law. And this is something we know that is the Federal Reserve Bank is responsible to get done over here. Even though the executive takes credit, but the CBL, the other half of that is the Ministry of Finance in Liberia. Over here, we'll look at the Treasury, where we have Janet Yellen, and we see what's happening in the U.S. economy. But in Liberia, in other countries, it would be the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance now is on the fiscal side. They're supposed to not take some of the income revenue generated and put it to its most efficient use to create jobs. So the Ministry of Finance, along with the Central Bank of Liberia, those are the two people that should ensure there is high growth, reduce unemployment, a stable economy, and reduce inflation. It's in the CBL law. If anybody get a chance to go read it, it's in there. So that's who our whole responsible, CBL and the Ministry of Finance. So I'll swing it over to my brother Depu.
Depu, same question. Maybe Commerce Ministry also?
Yes, thank you. I think Larry hit the point. The two policy, instrument, there's monetary and fiscal. Those two guys, the central bank governor and the Minister of Finance. What we'll also add there, because we try to take the revenue side from different areas, including LRA. These are the people who will say, okay, how do we collect the money, the taxes, and how do we ensure that the taxes are going to the right direction? So one thing we have to be looking at is that let's look at it in the simplest term. What's the role of the central bank? It's that, let's do it mom and pop daddy in the home. Mommy is supposed to be the one to keep the money. When daddy work and bring the money, mommy is supposed to be the one to make sure that the money is there. And mommy is distributing it among the children to make sure that if anyone needs recess and rest of it, the money is given. So now, anything happen, who is going to be the one to talk to? We say, oh, go to mommy. And before I go to mommy, I'll have to, first of all, daddy had to know the problem before mommy gave the money. So that's the kind of thing that we need to be looking at. So let's leave it from the household decision making and go to the national level. The central bank.
No, hold on. Because I like the mommy and daddy. So who's the mom now? Who's the daddy?
Oh, the mom, the mom in this case is central bank.
Okay.
The daddy there is the finance minister. So okay. the thing here now is, look, we have to be looking at the economy in such a way that, look, finance ministry, make sure that, look, we impose taxes and regulate the taxes and everything. And central bank, once we collect the money from LRA and finance ministry collect the money, they give it to central bank. And that itself, we have our money there, called the reserve, or whatever amount is kept. So in terms of spending the money now, then daddy, which is the finance minister, will tell us how much we use and where is it going and where should it go. So these are some of the things that we need to be looking at. But our challenge in Liberia is where, first, there was a challenge whether the two entity policy unit could speak. The central bank and the finance ministry, whether they could speak. And there was this challenge. Whenever you see the central bank is going to finance ministry for a meeting, it was difficult. But thank God they have now, IMF have come in under the IMF program. They have to relate to each other and see how best there's coordination between the two institutions. What is happening now to us is that why they say that finance ministry is not looking at the revenue collection and the expenditure side of it. There is something that Larry said, you intentionally look at efficient use of money. There's something that I have not understood of late. I'm still wondering, maybe when I read this other budget and look at the past budget performance, when the outturn, I'll be able to know. In all,
we have issue there.
Brother Depu.
Yeah, you can pick up from there, Larry.
Yeah, so when people hear in Liberia about prices going up, Right now, every time we hear that the central bank is going to print more money, sometimes people panic. Oh, Depu is back. So when we hear central bank printing money, why is it that people are panicked? Because we know that when the central bank prints more money and it goes to the Liberian economy, it always leads to prices going up. So the central bank and the Ministry of Finance, those are the two key players when it comes to job creation in the country, healthcare, the debt Liberia owes, all of that stuff, your welfare. So the person sitting out in Nukutan, the person in Douala, no matter where you are, your whole economic being, your well-being, whether you have money to go to send your children to school, to buy uniform, to buy rice, all of that really falls on the two key players. The person you put at the central bank has to be really, really smart, really, really sharp when it comes to managing the welfare of an economy. The person you put on the finance side, on the finance ministry side, has to be really, really sharp in terms of creating jobs in the economy. So those two key players. But take a look at Liberia. We can take a look around at the economy in Liberia as a whole and see if these two players are working well together. And we'll talk about that, but I know Depu was making a point, so let me give it back to him.
Sorry, I'm using cell phone interruption with calls. But the thing about it, like the two players not speaking to each other.
And Depu, to control that interruption, you can put your phone on do not disturb. But you can do that later when you're not speaking. Just end your thought.
All right. So the two players knowing what their responsibilities are, that is the key thing that we need to be looking at. In fact, the last week I was reviewing the IMF Article 4 on Liberia, and it's still, even other countries have fought hard and stabilized the economy from the COVID assistance given and this money that's given, but you still see that we still have challenges. And now the question there is that where are we spending the money that we receive for the stabilization of our economy? If indeed the money is there to provide cushion for the performance of the economy, what are the productive areas have we invested our money? These are the major questions. For example, are we focusing on production of food, agriculture? How much money have we invested in agriculture from the money that came as a COVID relief fund or the loan given us? Looking at the education side of it, how much time are we putting into our education in a revitalization, TVET program, technical vocational education, that will improve the skill level of our young people to become productive, to create opportunity for themselves? What are we doing? What's the spending limit in terms of the money we borrow? So you check in the economy, there's a need for the both arms to review their performance. We can borrow, it's just a sad thing. We cannot borrow and spend it on unproductive activities, because it is useless for us to do that, because in any case, we'll pay for that money in the long run. So what do? Go and review your activity. So that's why the Ministry of Finance has to be very much key, and we have to be after the Ministry of Finance to see what are some of the recovery program and activities that will make sure to stimulate growth in the economy, and what can we do to create jobs for the younger generation. And I will tell you that Liberia, the population is clear that you have more than 40% of the people under our age 25. If your population is like that, where do you invest your money? Why are you not considering skill level that will increase productivity for the younger generation? And if you have over the past, let's say 10 years, consistently, more than 40% of our population below 30%, 40% of the young people are all people without skill. What is also contributing to our disasters and also crises that you're looking at is there, because you have a lot of young generation without any employable skill, and at the same time they don't have education level, that the education attainment that can make them effective in the economy. These are things that we need to be looking at. So our post-COVID expenditure, we need to review it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's welcome Mr. Gabriel Tabito Carter, just joining us. Gabriel, welcome to the discussion, gauging the economic pulse of Liberia.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I kind of joined late because I was into other activity. But I think you guys are having a great discussion, so I will just want to listen in until I get caught up. You know.
Right. So my question for you here is, uh, we've discussed what it means to gauge the pulse, what really the economy is, and who is responsible of steering that pot so
Mhm.
that we have a vibrant economy. That's where we are. My question for you here is, do we, anytime we talk about the economy, you guys have a word, say economic indicators,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
do we, and other people are doing it, IMF, World Bank, and all these people, do they have enough data? Do they have what they need to be able to tell how our economy is doing based on those indicators? And do those indicators, and you can tell me what they are, do they even reflect, do they apply to all of us or to all aspects of our economy? Because I was not born in the city, I was all the way from behind God's back. Can those indicators be applicable to me?
No, that is a great question, and that is a loaded question. Now, hopefully, I can put some 2 cents here to it as well. So, in every other country, in a mini developing country or developed country, they have things that they look at in terms of things. I mean, indicators that they look at that the central bank studies or the regional central bank studies. Over here we have what we call the beige book. So the beige book is just a survey of the 12 central banks here, calling businesses, speaking to businesses, and understanding what are the drivers within those regions, right? So you can look at your housing, right? You look at the housing as an indicator. You look at food prices, gas. They will even boil it down to specific sectors, right? So that give you a gauge of not just at the end of the year. They do that every quarter. So every quarter the beige book comes out, right? So there are those indicators that we use here. Now, as far as Liberia, since I've started getting involved with the financial, trying to understand the financial sector of Liberia, I've yet to see any of that sort of measures that we can use to measure our economy. All that I've seen is what the IMF puts out, and the IMF and the World Bank, they do that every year. So you're telling me we can just wait at the end of the year to find out what is happening within our economy, right? Uh, to your point that you measure data, I know Larry is very big on data, right? We don't have data, right? We don't have data, so we can't understand our own economy. And it's I always say this: we can, if you do the basic thing, right? The simple thing. When I mean very simple, just the basic thing, repetitively, you will be able to do the bigger things very right. I mean correctly. Basic thing. People at the central bank can do that. You can say, hey, let's pick up phone and call businesses and see how many people they're hiring this month. Let's pick up phone and call businesses and call businesses. You know the businesses in the country, you know their number. Let's see how much stuff they're ordering for their business this quarter in terms of how they're gauging the economy. You don't know everything. Those people understand that what's happening in the market. People come to them every day, so they know what to expect. You can use that as an indicator. You can do a survey, ask Liberian people like the one that Tio usually does in the market, to ask people, hey, how are the prices of food in the market? You can do it in different regions, right? It gives you data. You can collect that data and be able to put out a survey or something like consumer like you and myself and businesses that are in the country can read every quarter to say, okay, this is where the central bank is putting out of what is happening in the economy, right? We can even look at import. Since we're heavily import based country, we can look at the amount of import that is coming in every quarter to say, if dropped this quarter, it has gone up this quarter. That's a good indicator of the things that are happening within our economy. We can formulate to land here. We can formulate our own economic data points that we can use, right, and perfect that is specific to Liberia to be able to help us gauge our own economy, as opposed to what we rely on the central bank. I mean, on the World Bank and the IMF, which comes out every year, and those things are not accurate. Central the World Bank and the IMF people, They don't go down Waterside. They don't go to Tody. They don't go to Maryland. They don't know what is happening within that the cream of the crops of that economy to be able to put data out that we should be able to rely on. So we should be able to come up with our own numbers to be able to rely on. Yeah.
Let me hear from Larry and then Depo on the same question.
Yeah, Gabriel nailed it. I mean, one thing that is important in Liberia is the population growth, right? Liberia, like Sierra Leone, like Guinea, a lot of the countries in the region, the population is growing at a very fast rate, over 2%. That means we have at least about 100,000, we're adding about 100,000 people to the population as a whole every single year. The problem is we're not keeping up with the job creation at the same speed. We're not creating jobs fast enough to match the number of people who are entering the workforce. But when we come to measuring, the economic data, in finance economics, no matter where you are, data is the basis for decision making. If you want to make a certain decision, I don't care what it is. You want to decide whether to move in a particular neighborhood, or you want to decide what to buy when you go to the market, you need information. And the information you need is just that raw data, the raw facts. How much money do I have? How many people can I feed on this? But when you put it at a larger scale in terms of the economy, you need to know, okay, how many jobs did we create? What is the healthcare situation let's say Grand Cape Mount? So you need to collect data in pretty much every developed country. And we can do this in Liberia. Data, the cost of creating a data storage bank, it's not that expensive like it was back in the 80s or the 90s. It's not that expensive. Back then, to get yourself like a 1 gigabyte drive or something, or put something in the cloud, it was very expensive. Why is this important? In Liberia, the Liberia Institute for Statistical ListGIS, we see what happened to ListGIS, right? They have been turned into a political, they've been manipulated politically. ListGIS is really designed to create or collect the data that is fed to the central bank to help the central bank make the economic decisions to create jobs. But ListGIS is now being used as some political pawn. In the US, we have something called data.gov. On the economic side, they have the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And one source that collects a lot of this information is something called FRED, the Federal Reserve Bank Economic Data Bank of St. Louis. If you go to FRED, you will see, you can even pull data about Liberia. If you go to FRED, the Federal Reserve Bank Economic Data Bank, it is so important. You never hear Joe Biden go and talk about something where he doesn't have the data to back it up. He talk about being, the fastest job creation. He backs it up with data. Gabriel is right. In Liberia, we don't have a data bank, so everything is based on assumption. So one false or wrong assumption that is being built upon another assumption, rather than just allocate enough money in the budget and put some statistician at ListGIS to do the heavy lifting. Because if I know that the population in, let's say, counted, the population is growing, and I know we're not creating jobs in our county, I know there's going to be an issue in our county. So I can now focus and put the resources in our county. Data is the basis for every decision that is being made. But can someone tell me how many jobs are created in Liberia the beginning of this year, or the first quarter of this year, from let's say January to March? You can't tell me. And when you ask people who's supposed to know, they say, oh, man, we don't know anything, man. It's always been like that way. We don't know. But because it's always been that way doesn't mean we can't change it. You come in with the mantra of hope for change, but the people are still hoping, and they still haven't seen the change yet. So, look, some of the economic data bank is on the central bank's website. I pay close attention to it because I always like to see some of these assumptions, whether they're realistic or whether they're false, but it's out there. And it tells, even the fake data sometimes they put out there, it tells a bad story about the economy, So that's it. We are where we are because we do things based on assumption and not on facts or data.
Thank you. Depu, if you can wrap that up. Okay. Depu,
Are you hearing me?
yeah, which one is it?
I'm switching 01.
All right.
So what I'm saying, I will say clearly is that the data challenge is really a serious a data challenge. Let's just supposed to be a place where technicians are going on the field. In fact, that's why you got each county has a statistics officer that they should be in a position to report on a monthly basis or quarterly basis whatever they collect locally so it can be synchronized at the headquarters. Unfortunately, I don't know what's the budgetary support, whatever the administrative procedure is over there. But in terms of data collection, it has been very much poor. Now, you brought this and as something that unfortunately I wasn't here to discuss the last time, but it brought a whole argument about how do we really understand the issue of data collection and statistics, how important it is to any development policy and development program. We look at the census. It just tell you clearly the weakness of legislation. The way the census were conducted, it just gave me clear indication that we should not have confidence in anything that comes from legislation because the definition of census was completely violated. The procedure for census collection were also violated. So realistically, it means that those in charge didn't know what they were doing. So then what's about the other data that are coming in? I must be able to give credit to the central bank. In terms of monetary data, the central bank have been very much, strong on that, been collecting this. In fact, most of the things you see, this is sometimes go to central bank to get it because they themselves get involved to say, you know what, the field technician, they don't have enough technician, but they use the few manpower they have to ensure they collect data. But how widespread and the coverage is one of the things that we're going to be looking at for the central bank of Liberia. But these are the constraints that the government need to take into consideration. And when a nation takes politics above anything and not taking economics above things, this is some of the result we get. And Jai always tell you, I'm so much interested in the economic life of people than political life because Liberia has high political sensitivity and low economic sensitivity. Once you have low economic sensitivity, your decision making is very flawed. In fact, it affects your livelihood, your family life, your community life, and your country life because it's a production and consumption decision. If you don't know production and consumption decision, anything that has to do with political institutional arrangement, it cannot work effectively. So we need to look at how to strengthen these institutions, especially legis, central bank, finance ministry, LRA. That's the place where you need more technicians to be collecting data, informing the public, informing the citizens. In fact, commerce ministry, you mentioned commerce, trade. So for us to know import, export, data, how many products the rights we import annually, you can compare our Ministry of Agriculture to the domestic production and what? Import of rice. Can we increase the import this year or we decrease the import? Can we increase the domestic production this year and next year we reduce the import of rice? How do we do it? It comes from data. You cannot make that decision until you can know how people are producing the economy. So data is very much key. We have to focus on that and invest our resources into that area.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is gauging the economic pulse of the country. That leads us to actually gauging it, right? How are we doing? How is our economy doing? And based on what we are looking at, what do we find? And what does that tell us? Larry, you can kick that off.
To use the words from the Ministry of Finance in terms of the letters that they sent over to the IMF, the economy is challenged. They love that word. The economy is challenged. The economy is poor because you can measure the economy based on what they have provided, and I mean they in terms of the central bank. The economy after Ebola, by 2016, 2017, the economy had grew slightly. But then come 2018, when we had this switch in administration, the economy fell in 2018. It fell again in 2019, and it fell a third year in a row, 36 consecutive months. The economy fell. That means there were no jobs being created. That means the economic activity in the country had fled. A lot of real there was no incoming of foreign direct investments, and foreign direct investments is so important. The way how the U.S. set up themselves to fight for foreign direct investments is it's like incredible, right? But the economy as a whole is in a terrible shape. It's rebounding. It rebounded slightly based again on the extractive sectors. It's not based on anything that it's doing internally in Liberia. Our economy, the Liberian economy, is based solely on how much iron ore we're exporting, how much other resources, oil palm, everything else. But it's not really based on manufacturing in the country, because if you have in the country manufacturing growing, it will lead to more jobs being created in the country. So overall, like the words of the Ministry of Finance, the economy is challenged, but will it able to rebound? Well, let's see what happens. I doubt if they have enough time to turn it around. They haven't done a very good job of turning it around over the past 4 years, and I doubt they'll be able to get it done within the next 205 days before election. So, and I was being kind when I say it is challenged. I was being very kind.
And Larry, what you're looking at what the anyway, let me go to Gabriel. But anyway, let me stay with you. What are you looking at? Is it just the finance, the data, or you're looking at, because you give me an example from the beginning when you ask people, do you have job? So what are you looking at to say the economy is challenged or is poor?
I'm looking at three things, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm looking at prices in the country, because prices affect everybody. Prices rising, prices being stable. No, prices just seems to be all over the place. When you don't have stable prices, and here's the thing, inflation, which is when prices rise, it hurts poor people a lot more than people who have money, because poor people spend a majority of the money they have to buy food. They don't have leisure money to travel overseas to have weddings. They don't have that kind of money. They spend most of their money staying home to feed their family. So I look at prices. The other thing I also look at is I look at the number of jobs being created. But since we don't have that data, I
Yeah.
can make some I can do some deduction on that. Because when I see the number of people who are complaining that things are hard in the country, it tells you that there's not a lot of jobs being created. Then I also like to look at the crime rate in the country. Crime is also another indication of how well an economy is doing, because when you have more people, when you have a higher crime rate or crime increasing, I don't care whether you're in the U.S. in some poor neighborhood in the U.S. or you're over in some in Liberia, but whenever you have increase in crime, it has also to do with the economic well-being of individuals in that community. So I will look at crime. I will look at prices. I know I see someone mention gas and food prices, but I know they kind of focus on headline inflation, not core inflation. But I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, so I'll just leave it as prices. I would leave it as prices, year over year prices. I will leave it as job creation. I will look at crime. So those are the kind of things that I use to measure how well the economy are doing. And when I look at all three of those things, it doesn't look too good right now.
Gabriel, what do you see?
For me, I think I will piggyback on what the commenter said, whoever comment on that in terms of the prices, in addition to what Larry said. So I know Liberia is a well, we are a big consumption-based economy where everything we do is, we import it. And one of the things that we import a lot is our staple food, which is rice. So that will be, how much rice is in the market. It's simple thing as going in the market and see the volatility of rice, the price in the market. Also, I think I mentioned this earlier, the amount, because we import everything, a good assessment would be looking at how much stuff people are importing. So let me share this story with you. And I think the last time we had Martin Zanway on here, he talked about that. This is someone who used to import container every month, right? But because of the prices to clear one container has, because the price of clearing one container has gone up, he reduced it to he reduced that to every 3 months, and that has gone up. So he scaled it back to doing it only holidays. So the major holidays, the July, August, and Christmas time. Those are the only time he imports stuff, right? He's not the only person that I talk to who ships. There's another guy here, another friend of mine, Alfonso, who does the same thing. He used to import cars. The price of importing cars, right, vehicles, has gone up. So he has scaled back from that, and all he does now is food. Even the rice to import rice has become so expensive that he has scaled back on it. So that tells you, if a good gauge of our economy, because we import everything, we'll be able to if somebody to be able to look at the import data to see how much goods are we importing in the country, and why is that. If we're importing a lot, that means there's a lot of consumption. If there's a lot of consumption in the country, that means a lot of people have money, disposable income to buy stuff. If they have scaled back on that, right, that means there's a lot happening within the economy and people don't want to buy it. So this is why suppliers who are, those who export, import stuff in the country, this is why they are scaling back too. People buy a lot in the market, you will see a lot of imports happening. If they start scaling back on that, you will see a lot of scale back on the people that supply goods in those markets. So I think the import data and the price within the market itself will be the two that I will add in addition to what Larry said.
Depu, and if you add what your colleagues have said, if you add that, add people outside the city area, yet they have to. When I was in Dodrican, people still have to go to Greenville to get salt, to get slippers, to get copybooks and cutlasses, right? So outside of the urban area, how do you gauge the economy of Liberia and how we're doing?
Thank you. Outside of what we're talking about, one of the things we also need to take into consideration are how many companies that are in fact you see that most of the multilateral companies that were in the country, some are closed and packed up. That is will tell you clearly that there's a serious problem with the economy. The next thing that there is that besides the input issue, which of course my two brothers have mentioned, you need to look at community businesses, how many businesses are still open and how many are closed. And you can see that on a daily basis. And in the community, one of the things, the simplest way to also look at how many goods are go unsold. Many people will tell you one simplest way that I usually do with my students is to say, how many stores are now operating around Matadi area? Tell me how's the market? How's the reception? All the drinking spot. Why how's the population now? The drinking spot. They say, oh, just few. And so there's other places closed. And online classes, when I'm asking that question, I just want to gauge to know in terms of performance how people are spending and how the economy is contracting. You can definitely tell from that. So you see the number of businesses that are closing in the neighborhood and how many people are going out of business and switching or diversifying to say, I'm leaving this one to go to the next one. The next thing that there is that you will see the trading aspect, the cross-border trade. You will see that definitely cross-border trade will reduce. Sometimes I will tell you clearly that most of the women traders who go across the border for these goods, once they go and borrow and they in their susu and they come trade, they cannot get a profit back, you see them shut down. So the cross-border trade movement will also determine that whether there's a movement, there's an increase of in the performance of the economy. So these are basic things that we're going to be looking at. In terms of our own activity, let me say this to you. In Liberia, check when do these people open and when do they close their stores? And then sometimes the young people, why are you asking the critical questions? If you're seeing these things, it means that many things happening. The economy is flourishing. If it's flourishing, no store owner will be rushing to close and go home or will be coming to open store late. These are some of the signs that you gotta be looking at. Simple, common economic indicators that is not in the economic world data that you got. Yes, these are the simple things you gotta be looking at.
Yeah.
So you ask me for a community approach. Thank you.
And how much of this has to do with, let's say, the knowledge of the people? Maybe they're not just business savvy. They don't even know how to do a business plan. They got into business or they're closing down. Or how much of this have to do with politics? Okay, this is uh this is CDC government, and I'm not a government person. So when I'm doing things to generate economic activities, I'm supporting the government, so I need to close. And I'm throwing these things out there, right? How much
One of
of
the
how much
one
of
of the
this is
things I'm sorry to
go
say,
ahead.
one of the things you gotta be looking at there that also becoming a constraint is also coming from the government own fiscal policy. The government talk about, pre-financing any work you do for government. So these smaller business, I will call them, low income people. For example, restaurant owner, the catering services company, and all these people that provide service for government. When they provide the service, they pre-finance it, and time for payment, there's a delay in payment. What is happening there is that it put many of them out of businesses. Construction company, that's why people say, oh, Liberian own business, Liberian construction company are not flourishing because once they pre-finance, they take loan from the bank and they go and pre-finance a piece of work to be paid back, and the payment delay or is canceled completely. They're not getting it. They got a backlash from the bank and they got interest charges on them, and the person run out of business. These are some of the serious fiscal issues that we also need to review. I know that it's a good policy to say pre-finance, and therefore you should have a system in place that automatically you pre-finance, you provide all the supporting document, and you're paid immediately. But where you have more than payment system is going more than 30 days after transaction, 60 days and 90 days, you definitely expect what? Decline in the business performance and also affect the economy as a whole. So these are some of the things that we need to be looking at to review. Besides
Yeah,
that,
I was asking the lack of knowledge to do business. How is that also a factor?
the lack
So
of knowledge to do business is a good question. Our people too. You gotta be looking at in terms of the consumption behavior of our people to know what kind of product to import. And the next thing that there is that there are demands for certain product at certain time, and the seasonality of our economy as well as some of the contributing factors. So when you're doing a business proposal, you need to be looking at the kind of product you provide to the public, and the cost of input in producing that product. Besides that, how many markets that are available? What's the demand for this identical product you're trying to import or produce locally? So these are things
yeah,
you need to take into consideration in terms of the knowledge level in doing business. But
yeah.
I can tell you Mhm.
I wanted to add to what Depu said in terms about. I think no, it was you, Dennis. I said the in terms of the opening and closing of the store. And this is something that I experienced the last time I was in Liberia. So when I'm in Liberia, I get up early, get up early, to go out in the store or market or go to the Ministry of Finance for not Ministry of Finance, the Foreign Affairs, because I was trying to get my birth certificate. You will get up early and go out there. I won't eat breakfast. So when I'm out there, I usually want to get breakfast when I'm out. The stores, like some people won't even come in the stores until 10 o'clock or 11, sometimes 11 o'clock, you see them straggling, right? To even go and buy tissue, like, those tissue box that people can put in a car where you can wipe your face, to even for a store to be open at 7 o'clock. Go to any other African country. By 6 o'clock, they place in the markets, people are moving about. But I went to Liberia, every time I get up 6 o'clock in the market to go in the market, stores are closed. And sometimes you go to somebody's store at about 12 o'clock, they're just coming in, opening the door, right? So it, I wanted to add to that because I think it's not something that is just, uh, I don't know if this is something that is unique to Liberia, but this is something that I've experienced every time I go to Liberia, right?
Hmm.
And it could be because, and this is the early time that people get up to do business, early in the
Yeah.
morning. By 12 o'clock, people are, they close out for lunch, or 2 o'clock, they also close out for lunch. And by 4 o'clock, they're closing, So if you are coming into the store to open your store late, around 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, how much time do you have to sell before you leave at 4 o'clock, right? So you don't have enough time. And that also contributes to the lack of knowledge in terms of how to do business. In addition to that, to what Depu was saying, it's this now, this is not unique to Liberia. This is unique to our African country. You will go to the waterside or the Douala market. Depu will be right here selling slippers and skirts and bangles that people wear. I will be right across from him selling the exact same thing. I uh, uh, Larry will be on the other side. Like we all sell the same thing. They don't understand. I don't think there's that knowledge of, you know, understanding your niche. Like if Depu is selling all of those things, if I want to be in a very specific area, I think it makes sense to sell something different, right? Or if Depu is selling only slippers, I will be beside him selling all bangles, right? If you buy a slipper from Depu, hey, Depu will say, go to Gabriel. Gabriel selling all bangles. You want to buy bangles too. But if he is selling the exact same everything that he's selling, and I'm selling the exact same thing, but I'm right next to him. Like you will stay there. How many people will go in that very area to buy the same thing from him, myself, Larry, and yourself, right? So those are the basic competition knowledge that is missing within our economy. And this is not just unique to Liberia. You go to Ivory Coast, the same thing. You go to Sierra Leone, the same thing. So that is something that is within the African countries in terms of understanding basic competition and being able to craft out your niche and be able to compete within that niche. Yeah.
So Gabriel, how is the economy in Liberia? Basically, how will you describe it?
From what standpoint? From the overall standpoint?
From the overall standpoint, are we doing good? Are we doing bad?
I mean, this is something. I mean, this is. I don't know if I want to say this is a rhetorical question. This is something we've been talking about, like for the last. I don't even want to put this on the current administration. For the
Yeah,
last
okay,
12 years,
because sometime we say these things, but then the World Bank or IMF information will contradict what we're thinking,
the
right?
what the World Bank puts out is an estimate, right? It's an estimate. It's a projection. So they say, hey, Dennis, or Larry, or Depu, you have this potential, right? If you do such and such and such thing, right? You okay? Perfect example. I might come to you and say, if you want to, somebody might come to me and say, Gabriel, if you want to put on certain amount of weight, right? If you want to put on certain amount of pounds, right? You want to buff up, you have the potential to do that because of the way you eat. However, you have to get up every day 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym. You have to at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. You also have to do another 30 minutes workout. Those are the potential they lay out, right? In order for me to achieve that level of weight that I want to put on. Now, if I don't remain consistent to that, I will not achieve that. So that's exactly how the IMF projection though and the World Bank projection is, right? They look at the economic activity within the country. They said these are your projections. We can this is if you do this policy changes, you reform certain policy within the administration within this 12 months period, you will be able to achieve that. So those projections we should not rely on because every time the IMF put out those projections, we never do what the IMF prescribes in those projections, right? And to answer the question about how is the Liberian economy, I don't need to say that. I think if you talk to, and Tio can do a good job sometimes when he go ask those people in the market, they tell you how things are. Things are gradually deteriorating. If you have family members in Liberia, you don't have to look for, since we don't have data, you don't have to rely on the data. Talk to every one of them. Say, how are things in Liberia? How are you making day to day? How are things? Everybody you talk to, you know, word of mouth is one of the most first hand research you can do, right?
Yeah.
So talk to those people, and they will give you the conclusive answers to that. That things have deteriorated, not just in this administration, but since the previous administration left. Even before they even left office as well. So I think that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Larry. Politics sometimes comes in.
Yeah. Oh, all politics is part of our DNA in Liberia. We can't go a day without trying to put in a little pinch of politics.
Right,
It's
and
not,
that's why sometimes these numbers is depending on who you talk to, would spin things, based on their political interests. That
Yeah,
happened.
that's true. People will put some numbers out there because it kind of serves their own purpose. Even the World Bank and IMF, for example, the World Bank had that little thing they would put out called doing business, that whole
Yeah.
doing business thing. Um, the World Bank had to stop using that doing business thing because politics got involved. They were giving China, China was influencing the World Bank doing business scale. Other countries were kind of suffering, but China managed to influence it. And when the World Bank find out that, hey, China was influencing some people in terms of writing and putting out the numbers on the doing business measurement, the World Bank had to pull that whole doing business thing out and said they were going to try to redo it. Politics play a key role in that stuff. And to piggyback off what Gabriel is saying in terms of the numbers that the IMF and World Banks are putting out, don't believe that nonsense. If you're believing it, then you need to check yourself. Let me tell you why. A lot of times, the numbers they're putting out is just a complete nonsense. And they'll piggyback off Gabriel. No one has I don't want to put it in Liberian phrase, a medicine man who can really see the future, right? It's all prediction based on estimates. And here's where they've been wrong. The Liberian economy was doing well in 2005, 2006. The World Bank, as usual, IMF, put out a great prediction. The Liberian economy was going to grow. What happened in 2007, 2008? We were hit with a financial crisis. Some of the major banks in the US failed. And it's a saying that when the US economy sneezes, or when the US economy sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. Because the US economy suffered that financial crisis in 2007, 2008, remittances to Liberia and other economic activities to Liberia kind of slowed down. Remember that Liberia was collecting a lot of money, remittances, and economic activity. It slowed down in 2007, 2008. It started to bounce back later on, like around 2011, when the US economy started coming out of the financial crisis. Again, the IMF stepped up and said, oh, wow, the Liberian economy is going to grow at around 6-7%. But that was also nonsense because by December of 2013, Liberia got hit with Ebola. So all that prediction they put out there was meaningless because the reality of it, Liberia economy is dependent on the extractive sector, is dependent on everything outside Liberia. So Ebola hit Liberia. Liberia started to bounce back at around 2016, 2017. And then what happened again? By 2020, March of 2020, Liberia got hit by COVID. So COVID hit the entire world. So the Liberian economy tanked again. And all the while, I saw people brag. Every time the IMF put out this prediction, people are so excited and happy. But these predictions have been wrong consistently for the past 15 years. At what point will you take a step back and do like my brother Gabriel and say, this is absolute nonsense. We can't buy into this nonsense and rhetoric coming from the IMF because they have been consistently wrong in predicting the Liberian economy. So I've given you the prediction and the reality of what happened. And now take a look at what's happening here. Well, I know that the U.S. economy is being stabilized with with Silicon Valley Bank and Republic Bank and all these banks. So it's not going to spread like how it did in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
But ask yourself this question right now. If you're looking at the Liberian economy, every Liberian out there should ask themselves this question. Based on what happened with the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, based on what happened on Ebola, based on what happened with COVID, do you think there would be another crisis forthcoming? And if that crisis were to hit, do you think the Liberian economy can withstand it? We cannot withstand everything. We cannot withstand it because we depend solely on the extractive sectors.
Yeah.
We depend solely on what everybody else is doing to us. Even the people who are lending us money, we depend on them. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And let me tell you why real quick before I swing it back to you, Dennis. When Ambassador McCarthy was trying to make the comparison between Liberia and Singapore, he was right in a certain extent. The three tigers, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, those were some corrupt countries. They were some of the most highly corrupt countries. You couldn't get anything in Singapore or Thailand or Hong Kong done without paying some gang. But they turned themselves around. Hong Kong is on that top 10 list of countries with the highest GDP per capita, the number of individuals in the country that has wealth, very high in Hong Kong. Singapore is in the top 5. Taiwan is doing extremely well. This is to tell you that Liberia can be turned around. But you're not going to turn Liberia around when you take a plumber and try to make him a brain surgeon. That's not going to happen. It's never happened in the history of the world. And what make you think will happen in Liberia?
You
So
gotta
we
you
do
gotta
things
get you gotta give
backwards,
people a chance. You gotta
and we
give people a
expect
chance in
things to
life.
be better.
Miracles do
It's
still
going to
happen.
happen,
And
folks. We got to get wise up. When they asked
Now, thank you.
the finance minister in Botswana, Botswana has one of Botswana is considered a middle income state. How did Botswana do it? Botswana only been around, 56, 57 years. We've been around 170 years. Why is Botswana a middle income state and Liberia is such a low poverty country? The guy said we did it based on meritocracy. We put people in job based on their skills, based on their understanding, and based on their past history. That was the same statement the Minister of Finance of Singapore said when he was interviewed. He said we put people in jobs based on meritocracy. A lot of countries that are developing, they do that.
So
In Liberia,
Damon,
you put somebody on a job and you ask them to define the difference between fiscal policy and monetary policy, and they start looking to the heavens and asking for Jesus. You gotta be serious, folks. At some point, you gotta get serious. You can't do that stuff, man. I'm sorry, man. Let me swing it back over to you guys.
thank you,
God
Larry.
answers prayer, you know.
Maybe, yeah, you don't know that. Say, call on me and I will answer you. But where do we look? We want to gauge the economy or how we're doing. I won't be able to call you guys and have a show every day. I am home. I want to see how we're doing. For me, the place I check will be trading economics, right? So how do you tell and where can you point us? So when I was checking trading economy, this is what I saw, right? So I look at prices. They say 2021, 2022, previous 7.23, then full inflation. And this is October 2022 data. They say previous minus 5.12, now 3.08. Consumer price index, housing utility, and so on and so forth. So sometimes when you look at some, I don't know what they mean, but sometimes they look good, right? Depu, where do we look and what do you recommend? And what you saw there, what does that tell you?
Yeah, most of the data is all of these things are also projection, as Larry and Gabriel said. And when the reality there, projection is very much important. But having projected, what it also do is that you see the actual and the projection are two different things. So it's always good for you to be looking at your actual, meaning how the economy is really performing. Meaning you have to be collecting data on your daily production, your daily investment decision, everything. That will help you. And that is a come from. For now, I usually use the Central Bank of Liberia. They got a quarterly financial statistics that come out. You need to be looking at that. Sometime Legis is always behind, sometimes 2-3 months before. In fact, whole year they are not updated anything. So for me, that's what I look for. The international data, yes, I go there. In fact, the WTO, trending economy, IMF, and all those places, I'm going to go there. But these things are also going to be important when you use a domestic database, and that's my own concern. I'm not really looking at it much from the perspective of international reporting, but I'm looking at it from in terms of domestic data collection.
So when you
So
go to the central
where
bank,
I
where
can,
do you look? What does that tell you? Tell me again where on the central bank website.
yeah, they got a financial statistical bulletin. They also have a quarterly data they produce, and they got a monthly. So you go there, you actually see some of this information clearly for you. So Uh, maybe what I can do is to forward it to you when we finish. I'll just hit it so you can be familiar with it.
Right.
That's what I usually look for. But back to the issue of the politics of the economy. Political economy, these two things are intertwined. But one of the things that we have to take into consideration is that even in the economics, there's something that we call specialization and division of labor. That is a give way to productivity. So that is to say, if I specialize in this And then therefore, in terms of division of labor, I should be given what actually I can do best. And if we don't do that, it give room to all of the policy lapses we are having. So will you take someone who has not really been well grounded in in monetary policy or monetary, statistics to become a central bank governor? That's the question. It becomes a difficult thing. Whoever becomes the minister of finance, how well schooled is this guy into finance, into economics, and all of these things? These are decisions you'll be making. But not only the central bank and finance ministry. Let me say one of the areas that you were asking question about the early closure and the late opening of stores in Monrovia. One of the indicators that when I discuss with my students, I tell them is that it's tied to security. Besides security, it's also tied to electricity. So these are all you see, trickle down effect. Every decision, every policy action have some ripple effect on the other. So because lack of electricity, it also lead to what? Security challenge. And the lack of security also give rise to low production because stores and businesses cannot open on time. So once stores and businesses are not opening on time, they have low income, with low income, what will happen? Reduction in what? Production and reduction in employment. So these are all the things we are be looking at. So in this case now, what would be the best political decision you'll be making? So you know that in Liberia economy, they actually did a review of the economy and say what are the key drivers that are needed? What are the binding constraints to growth over there? The binding constraint was energy and raw. Now the same administration that is there today, my colleague Brother Samuel Tua was one of the analysts. He know that binding constraint electricity, energy, and raw. But they met CLSG line open. You got Cote d'Ivoire that comes from Cote d'Ivoire. It's still lying down to pay for it to connect. It's a challenge. Mount Coffee, turbine are also spoiled in the scene. Lack of repair. So maintenance. So what are you looking for? You are not solving the binding constraint problem, and you expect growth in the economy. It's difficult. So these are some of the things that is a political decision we make. Why should we give priority to something that had to do with right distribution when you have to look at electricity? And that political decision. The role public works is thinking about, how do we give all the contract to the Chinese company or all the international company? When you have almost all of these engineers that are in the economy, how are they, making sure that Liberian engineering firm or Liberian engineering society is getting involved with the bidding process? The bidding is completely outside of their zone. I can tell you clearly that it's the same thing that happened to the health area. The Liberian Medical and Dental Association should be the one to actually qualify doctors that are coming in the country. The same thing in the pharmaceutical industry, drugs that are being imported. So it's an issue of division of labor and specialization is very much key. And when it comes to politics, we sideline these things. It also leads to what? The challenge that we are facing in the country. So politics is also harming us seriously. I can tell you that's our major challenge we are faced with.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be a part of the discussion, please call the number that is on the screen. And that's the number in the scrolling text there. Please call that number and take part. 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. Let's look at some comments here. Some comments. Jackson is gauging the economic pulse, the borrowing of loans from the only investment bank in the country. Borrowers not paying back the loans. How will investment flourish in the country, creating jobs? Dr. Edison Pajibo, I love the focus on data. Research is data-driven, so if the latest is politically biased, we will not get the right figures for input cover, the fiscal deficit, or the balance of payment deficit. All these have influence on the people's purchasing power. Actual fact, I want a name because people.
He's from I think President's from YouTube.
Emmanuel Jackson said any economy that does not have credit rating is that economy in question. And these are a few of the comments. We have more comments here. Hamilton Zilli say you are right. The economic viability of any country is paramount to the socio-economic, socio-political stability of the people. Dr. Padi will also say if the economy by 2023 is projected to grow by 3.2 to 4%, then it's really a challenge. In my opinion, the country, in addition to the weak agricultural and industrial sector, needs to invest in the service sector by embarking human capital development. This will render the growth a bit sustainable and inclusive. Economic development depends on schedule. The Asian tigers, such as Malaysia, move out of poverty and corruption by investing heavily in education, especially vocational and technical. Darling say electricity power is security. Liberians are finding it difficult retrieving credit data for their phones. Imagine what college students are facing. That's another thing. People are always asking for credit. Data.
That's
Maybe
a good
that could be
indicator.
a new economic indicator, Depu. You don't think so?
I was talking to somebody the other day about, so every time you go to Liberia, you hear these kids around Lone Star data, Cellcom data, recharge your phone, right? They used to be everywhere in the country. Now you barely hear them. That has decreased. So I was asking someone the other day, I said, what happened to those people that usually sell data in the street? They say, hey, they're not, that the economy is not doing so much. That's why you don't see a lot of them. And I just thought that was kind of profound that people use that to gauge that how bad things are.
We have one caller here. So callers, please call in. Let's bring in our first caller. The first caller is Darling Warwood. Darling, you're live. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my friend have 2 points to express here. That is one, in Liberia, for the longest, as far as I can know, bank has been closing at 2 o'clock p.m. At top in Liberia. But power in the bank closes at 2 o'clock in the Liberia. I don't know why, and I want FOL to dive into the process because the key things happen on the economy and all of that. And so the issue of the United States and all of that, I want to say to the student guests, that everything that is going on here is that we die. Because in order to control a group of people like what you guys are doing like here, you have to keep them in poverty. Keep them in abject poverty. Keep them uninformed. Keep them unhealthy. That's the only way you can control them. They know exactly what to do. Some of them is knowledgeable. He lives in the West. Very well lives in the West. All of these guys live in the West. They know exactly what to do to keep the youth to solve problems. They know. But there is a system that they keep a mess. And they continue to perpetuate this system. And that is to keep the poor. And that is the only way you can control that and continue to stay in power. So I let all the really stress on the issue of banks closing at 2 o'clock. Here in the United States, other banks close at 7. They're closing at 8 a.m. They close at 7 p.m. But in Liberia, they will open at 9, 9:30, and 2 o'clock they close. So let's say 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 5 hours. You got 24 hours in a day and 5 hours you are open to the public. I think that is also have a serious downward effect on our economy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Uh, Gabriel, Larry, Depu can take the color.
Yeah, I mean, what he's saying is true. And I think some of the reasons why the banks are closing early is because they may not even have enough money in the vault. Because when you have a number of non-performing loans, the ratio of loans, meaning people are not making payments on the loan, not to get too complicated with NPL, people are just not making payments on the loan. It's supposed to be, I think, technically around maybe 10% or so. But I know at one point, I think I don't know who published it. I think it was the CBL or someone published it. But it is astronomical. And I think they're closing early too because they sometimes may not even have enough money in the vault, you know? And that's a problem because people do not necessarily, some people need to access their money to do business. And if the bank is closed, they can't access that money. And you know, the one thing that scares me about what's going on with the banking system in Liberia, I've heard stories about people coming to the bank to try to withdraw money and the bank refusing to allow them to withdraw money. I'm not sure what legal grounds the bank has for doing that. But the one responsibility a bank has, if I put my money in there, their fiduciary responsibility, they owe to me the ability for me to come any time of the day and withdraw my money. Now, considering what's happening in the US with the banks being closed and people can withdraw their money, banks will try to do that to stop what is called a run on the bank. You know, I'm calling my friends over here, hey, listen, you know, the bank is closing down, go get your money. And then when one bank closed down, another bank may close down. It leads to something called contagion because now more banks may end up closing down. But the US has insurance. Your money is insured up to $250,000. We don't have that kind of level of insurance in the banking system in Liberia. So, yeah, banks closing down all those kind of weird hours. That is not good. I don't even have faith in a lot of the banks in Liberia anyway. I doubt if I can put serious money in there and expect to pick it up when I need it. So,
Depu, is that the report?
yeah, that's one of them. That's one of them.
Yeah, that's a full third quarter one there. Financial economic bulletin. You always see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and what does this show the latest financial economic bulletin from the central bank? What did it tell you?
If
In
you
terms
zoom
of
in there, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tapu.
no, go ahead.
If you zoom in on that report, it will tell you something quickly about prices. Um, because a lot of things driven in the country, like inflation and things like that, it will show you prices over time. It will show you comparison where prices are now. It will show you things like imports. It will show you things like government borrowing. So a lot of that information is in there, and they're doing it because they are required by law to do that. They're required by law to do that. Go ahead, Jepu. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, it's fine. I think that's basically they give you, status update on the performance of the economy, and that what end into the annual report. So for you to get a quarterly report, it's always good. You also get an import data, export data, and the government debt and all of the basic data statistics you'll be looking for.
So I think that is their equivalent of what we call here the beige book that comes out every quarter. But the thing is, right, the beige book, the people in the business community, like business owner, they feed on that thing, they feed on the data. It informs most of their decision. Let's say you own business and you can read that thing and it will gauge in terms of should I order this level of machinery this quarter, or should I wait based on what is the economy is telling you, right? So it's just like a good roadmap to help you gauge in terms of how you plan for your business for the year or every quarter, right? But the thing is, I think that is good and well, but you, myself, Larry, Dennis might go there and read it. How well is the average business owner in Liberia being able to understand what is in there. So I think the where I'm going with it is that in addition to that, they, you know, do a communication, you know, let's say come out every 3 months and talk about what is in the data. Say, hey, this is, we just published this. This is what is happening in the economy. Let people see you. Let people hear what is in there, as opposed to you depending on them, because you know our society, you know, obviously
Mm.
not most of us can go digging in that to go read it. So let people understand to get a good gauge of what is happening in the economy, right? That that we just saw could have good information in there in terms of what is happening in the economy. But is it contrary to what is actually happening in the economy, or how people behaving in terms of what they think is happening? You know, so it could be data that is there, it could be good key data that is there, but in terms of business owner acting in terms of the actual what they believe based on their sentiment that is happening in the economy could be different from what is in the data. So I think in addition to publishing that, we should also have some kind of, you know, we're big on what we call press conference. Talk about the data. Have somebody
Yeah.
from the central bank to talk about it. Do a, you know, go on one of these shows like FOL or whatever thing, and talk about these things. You know, do a rounds on the national radios and talk about them every quarter, so that way people that are, you know, that are, who have businesses, or like we said, people that are in Botuo and all those, you know, they understand what is happening within our economy. So I think that's something that they should be able to do as well, in addition to publishing that, and it just remaining in the back end. Yeah.
Thank you. And as we draw down the curtains, let's talk briefly about whether is this whole idea of financial illiteracy, because these are not things people talk about, right? Even politicians don't talk about them, being it all sides. They don't talk about these things, and so we as individual citizens, we don't even know how they affect us. We had a reporter today, FOL reporter in Calcutta, and talking to people in the market. People don't even know what to ask for, right? So the idea of improving the economy will be, let them come and give us money to make business. So are we really failing in this, or maybe letting people know how their lives are connected to the economy, what the economy is, or things that can be done to improve their livelihood? Most of the time, what they're asking for is, just give me money, let me make business, or something. So, what's the approach here, Mr. Kennedy? How do we do this so that people, like the way you explained it today, the economy is like the blood. It has to run. And the central bank, the finance ministry, the mom and the pop in the home, this is what they're supposed to do. Why most of us don't know these things, Larry and you?
You know, that's a great question you just raised, Dennis. And it ties back to another question you asked earlier in terms of if businesses were failing people because people just lack business knowledge. And those are two important things. And the Federal Reserve Bank here in the United States, they put out a little small blue book on financial literacy. In that book, I used to get I used to get copies of that book because I used to do some volunteer work teaching financial literacy in some communities around in Texas. So financial literacy is so important so people can know, if you're starting business, what everything means. Even the Small Business Administration here in the US, they provide support and help to small businesses. They teach you how to write business plan and make you understand. This also happens in places like Kenya and Rwanda and some of those other countries. They have financial literacy. It let people understand the value of money. If you're buying something today for $10, how much you need to sell it for to make a profit. All those kind of things are so important. This is where the Ministry of Commerce come in place. In the United States, around the world, they have people specifically positioned to help U.S. businesses in certain markets. That's how the U.S. Bring in foreign direct investments, and that's how the U.S. support the economy. So, yeah, to your question, Dennis, financial literacy is so important. If the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Finance, or the central bank can get together and do this financial literacy thing consistently, it will have an impact on the economy, because people need to understand, how do you raise money? How do you spend the money? How do you continue to invest in your business? At what point do you know you're going out of business and you have to pay back that money? All those things are so important. But I know we have limited time. But I just wanted to let you know that you raised a very important question in terms of financial literacy. And I hope at some point, FOL Marketplace can talk about financial literacy and see how that would impact the people on the ground.
Let's conclude with that, and let me get your closing comments around everything that we've discussed. If there's anything you want people watching us today to know about our economy, what would that be, and what can be done to make the economy to perform better?
Yeah, I'll go first since I was the last on here. I think I'm glad that you guys shared that piece on the quarterly report that the central bank puts out. I think that's going forward. That's something we should be covering every quarter. Whenever they put it out, because I think it has enough data in there to gauge on. Since they are not doing the reporting that they're supposed to be doing, maybe we can help out here in terms of when it comes out every quarter, we review it just like we do the budget to take it apart piece by piece and disseminate the information that is in there for people to understand. So I think that's something we should do every quarter. But in terms of my overall how to gauge the Liberian economy, I think Larry said everything that we needed to talk about: the crime, the prices, and I also added that we need to look at the import prices, the import quotas that are within the that we every quarter, and we also need to look at the prices of the staple food within the economy. And I think if this is something we have time to do, we can even do an assessment every quarter. Like what Tio usually does when he goes interview people in the market in terms of who they're going to vote for. We can do that in terms of come up with a list of things to ask people for in terms of how the economy is doing. And to top it off, I think something that I think Larry added as well is the financial literacy. I think that is killing us. We have no business idea in as much that we think we might have business ideas in our country. We do not. This is why we've never seen a single millionaire outside of the government in our country, because we don't have business idea, regardless of how savvy we think we might do. So educating the public on that and being able to offer that articulation that I think the central bank should be doing will provide some kind of information to the general public that they need to understand in terms of gauging the economy that we don't already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Depu?
All right, thank you. I think it's good that we have this engagement on the performance of the economy. And I will also want to challenge my colleagues at the central bank. It's just the issue of the same discussion about politics. The central bank has a lot of information, a lot of technicians, and they're capable to discuss the economy. But again, the bureaucracy and someone have to approve it. They don't want discussing issues that contravene other government side. These are things that people are trying to avoid. But I think it's something that we need to engage them with the dialogue. Even though we have invited them on many occasions, they haven't been approved from the governor. I hope that when we start the suggestion from Gabriel, when we start the conversation on their quarterly bulletin, it might interest them to see, okay, there's a need for us to go after this, and so they can appear on our show. And when it comes to the issue of financial literacy and the performance of the economy, I've encouraged many of the media guys to see how best they can have a conversation most of the time. But the media is a make or break people in Liberia. Most of the guys in the media, Dennis, all of them are looking for news. And the definition of media news is almost like everything that had to be with negative and something that the people prioritize it. How many people are fighting, how many people are causing each other. It began very attractive to the public because they like to listen to politics. But we want to engage the media in such a way that people be discussing some of the practical things, what affect the living standard of the people, the economy, how the local markets are doing, and how the businesses, the market women. That's simple thing that we can do to change the tide around. So we can also go to the media and engage them, other radio station, and sometime Adue, Magibi, Nimba, and a few times I didn't grant by. So sometimes the student call, oh, what do you think? Okay, let me discuss that issue shortly. Then you explain why this decision is affecting the public and why the decision is made. Like that, it can also help. So we need to do more engagement with the public on that. And finally, I want to say that uh, let us now use this opportunity to also gauge those politicians. What are their political, I mean, their economic strategy? What are they thinking? How can they change the tide around? Even if the current administration, what different can they do? What can they do differently from what it's been doing for the past 5 years? These are things that will also encourage the public to get attracted to for this FOL marketplace to help improve our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, before you come in, I want to announce that at 7 p.m., please tune in to the Liberia History Channel. We're going to be talking about Basa 360. That's a historical narration of Basa from 1461 to 1821. It's happening today at 7 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. Laura, your closing comments.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dennis, for inviting me, and also to my friend Gabriel and Depu for being here as well. This was an important conversation. Look, the elections are 7 months away, 205 days to be exact. You will hear a lot of politicians will be asking the questions: are you better off today than you were 6 years ago? What they're pretty much asking you is, are you benefiting from the economy, as opposed to some of the other people now who are considered the elite, because they can fly private jets, they got escorts, they can buy new cars and new clothes anytime they want. So when politicians start asking you, are you better off today than you were 6 years ago? You look at the economy and say, how has the economy benefited me, right? What are some of the leading causes of death in Liberia? Like diarrhea disease, for example. Are we putting enough money in healthcare? Is the economy generating enough for us to put into healthcare? When we look at the budget, I think it was last year, sometime in November or so, I think it was the Liberian Observer that said another cause of deaths in Liberia is traffic accidents. And people are dying in traffic accidents because sometimes
a young Liberian artist just died from traffic accident again.
a traffic accident. The road condition is bad because we don't have roads that are well lit. And when people get hurt in an accident, the poor people have to go to some of the hospitals on the ground where the people, the so-called elites, can fly outside of the country. So when you start asking yourself, are you better off today when you look at the economy? These are things you're asking yourself. Women who are dying when they're giving birth, no one should lose their life while giving life. It's high in Liberia because we have very poor healthcare. Do we invest enough money in the healthcare sector? We don't. So the economy impacts everything that you do. Everything that you do, it impacts that. The prices you pay for the food that you buy in the market is all driven by the economy. Gabriel mentioned something, and I will close on this. Gabriel mentioned something that is important. When was the last time the central bank governor had a news conference? How often do they have news conference and explain what is going on in the economy? We don't see that stuff. I think FOL Marketplace is probably the only place where we spend a lot of time discussing the economy. The economy impacts the lives of everybody in the country. And my final word is, in the words of James Carville, the strategist for Bill Clinton, 1992, he said, it's all about the economy, stupid. If you're not paying attention to the economy, you need to go to bed. Don't complain. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Let me also announce tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Women Transformational Leadership. Women Transformational Leadership on the noonday. The noonday comes on every Sunday at 1 p.m. with Priscilla Yanato. This Sunday, the guest is Seru Kona Gallo. She's a conflict resolution, peace building activist, and civil society leader. You don't want to miss Women Transformational Leadership. And we're discussing something, and somebody pointed out that in Liberia, half of the population is women, right? So if you suppress women, or if you treat women bad, or if you keep them down, it means you are keeping half of the population down. And so what kind of
Correction, not because those poor data came out, it's 51%. of the population.
Oh,
51% of the population women.
It's a majority.
it's women, so it's majority. So if you keep them
That's a
down,
good statistic. That is a good statistic.
no, I thought it was the other way. That's why they were complaining, right? They changed it around. So in any
No,
case, if you suppress them, it means you are suppressing half of the population of the country, and no country
yes,
can progress with half of the population being down, being illiterate,
That's right.
being abused, being marginalized, or being, lied to. So that's very important. That's why this Sunday, please watch Women Transformational Leadership on the Noonday with Priscilla Inanta. Again, the guest is Saru Konangalo, a conflict resolution, a peace building activist, civil rights leader, and also a feminist. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the time. I want to also thank our viewers for always watching Focus on Liberia. At this time, we're going to close the show with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Is the economy stupid?
We are Liberians.